Hey guys, we are back, maybe with a change of scenery today, maybe a more relaxed feel, and all in one location. So for those of you that have been listening to our podcast and had to kind of struggle through the Zoom interactions, today hopefully solves that. We are here at the Hayden household doing a little meeting and thought it'd be a great time to do some podcasting too. Keep you guys in the loop, explain some things coming up like we always do. You'll see a few additional guests pop up on screen. We've got the Wade family here so far today with Justin's dog. So we could jump right in and hopefully you guys take some things away and are a little bit entertained. So as always, Justin, Steve, Galen, how we doing?
Good. First.
Everybody's good. Awesome. Where do we want to kick this thing off? How do you think we should launch in? I guess maybe the first thing maybe right around the corner is
talk about drinking maybe.
Okay. We'll talk about business later. We'll talk about drinks now. If you're interested, I've now got a barista license. Didn't know I got it, but I do. So Steve has a mocha iced coffee, and I have just an iced coffee. So
it's not James.
It's not James. So I guess the first thing right around the corner from a gym news standpoint is what we have coming up, not this week that we are currently in, not the following, but one week away. And that is going to be our Hero's Journey week. So if you guys want to expand on that, it's an exciting time we always look forward to. It's a chance for members to challenge themselves a bit, mentally and definitely physically, improve a little something with themselves. So
Year 4, right?
Year 4. So it's year is.
Golly. It's a lot. Every year the Hero Workouts, CrossFit has some basically hero workouts for law enforcement or military or someone important. It's also their life, and it's usually, as Sarah said, super challenging mentally and physically. So we're going to do a week of those. With the end of the week, Hero's Journey workout from our own brains that kind of mimics or falls paths with Joseph Campbell and Hero's Journey. So that'll be on Saturday, but 5 days before that will all be named CrossFit Hero workouts and be pretty tough. We're going to get a mix of long and short, and there's one in there not for time that we kind of switch around a little bit, but they're pretty good.
Yeah, you guys have a pretty good rallying feel around the gym when that week comes up every year, don't you?
Yeah. The way I think of it is if you enjoy prepping for Murph, if you're one of those people, which there's a lot of those in our gyms, this is your week. It's a good way to allow us to suffer together. And then, of course, at the end, we can celebrate that we've made it through another year. And then we normally even accompany that with a shirt to kind of commemorate what we've done. But it's a lot of fun out of the way. I would rather do those workouts with my friends than to do those alone. So,
yeah. I remember in year 1, a member said, I called it the first annual Hero's Journey. He said, beware using those words, meaning you may not make it again. So if he's watching this, now it may not be a 5th year, but for now, it's a way that we wrap together the ideas of honoring our country. It happens on the 4th of July week. So we celebrate our patriotism and the value, the price that we pay for that, but also celebrate what it means to undertake the hero journey a la Joseph Campbell, and maybe refusing calls to action and recognizing call to action and diving into the fray and having a dragon to slay and all the other things that rhyme unintentionally, but where you learn about who you are, who you can be, who you are not yet, essentially.
That's like most people go through those moments throughout this week. Everyone's always excited, just like Murph. It's like kind of exciting until it's not, until it's suffering, until it's a lot of suffering, until it's finished and rewarded.
Or no hope.
Yeah.
Hang on to the thread.
Yeah, usually every year there's like one that just sticks out. You're like, man, I hated it. There was one year that we did that was the 31 back squats, which 5 rounds. That's the one I hear the most about, even to this day. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but
that was year 1. We weren't sure we were going to make it. Second or third day of the week.
I love it. The one that sticks in my head was year 2. Remember you were there with me, and it was it heavy?
I think it was that one, 31 back squats and 12 power cleans.
Okay, was it the same one? Okay, that's the one.
That was year 1.
Okay, for some reason I thought it was year 2. Okay.
I watermark with pain. There's the pain.
Right, and I'm sitting next to a couple Clydesdales here that are really strong and move that weight with no problem. It was everything I could do to even, I don't even know, I don't think I technically put shit in the cap.
What do you got, like 1 minute cap or something? Tears like, I'm done. We're like, no, you're 35 minutes.
35 minutes, my man.
Chance like I'm done. I'm like, dude, you got less than a round left. You do this. He's like, nope. And he's like, all right, I'll do it. And he got up, did it. Really good at it.
I'm sure that's a story that'll probably be told 5 more times. I'm sure it's been told twice already.
Yeah. I talked to Bob on the phone the other day, and he was talking about it, wanting to do it. He's like, by Tuesday or Wednesday, he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. He's like, just got to do it. Yeah. And he's like, you feel so much better after the week's over.
Yeah, for sure. If you can undertake that, just that same thing about building upon character. You undertake 6 consecutive tail beating workouts. Then life overall isn't quite as challenging as you believe it to be.
Yeah. May not get physically fitter that week, but you're going to get mentally fit.
Right.
Or mentally fitter.
No doubt. If your hardest thing alive, I don't remember whose podcast it was.
The hardest thing's ever happened to you is the hardest thing that's ever happened to you.
Right. And they use the example of the hardest thing you've ever done in life is changing a tire. Then that's still the hardest thing that's ever happened to you. This week we'll give you a new reference point. That's for sure. That's for sure. So I jokingly tell classes it's our one chance a year to program as recklessly as possible, but as responsibly as possible also, if that makes any sense. Yeah. Because rarely would we ever want to rake people across coals like this. It's not sustainable. Doesn't result in long-term health or longevity, but boy, does it sharpen upstairs the 1 week you would do it. So,
yeah, and it's not as if we've Justin wrote this one earlier. It's not as haphazardly pieced together. It's still very thoughtful, but it's a time when we throw caution to the window about overtraining and too much volume and repetitious of movements. We're very much less worried about those particular things and more worried about, all right, how hard can we make it without injury?
Yeah. So it is like returning briefly to year 1 of your program.
Right. It's maximum effectiveness. What's the most we can do to get away with it? That's close to the least we can do it and get the benefit from it. And the benefit always is just mark AR.
Yeah. Day 1, it has a 45-minute cap, so we're going straight into it on day.
To the wise. Yeah, like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Cool. That's exciting. I'm looking forward to it and watching people grind through it. Yes. And I guess to it, sorry. 2 weeks, yeah. So speaking of, I jumped the gun a little bit. We do have something coming up this weekend. So depending on what day you're listening to this podcast, this weekend being the 29th. Sorry, a little off on dates and such, but we are hosting our weightlifting workshop in both locations. So we jokingly can call it Olympic weightlifting. It's weightlifting, as we talked about in our last podcast. So both locations will host that. You guys run it at 9 as well?
Yes.
Both will crank up at 9, expecting a couple hours, give or take. We're hoping.
Always plus.
2-ish hours, 2.5 hours, 2 hours plus however long extra you want to stay, maybe, where we get to break down some additional technique on the clean jerk on the snap. It's also going to be fun.
And not as with a barbell, maybe a little more efficiently for the week ahead.
Yeah.
Hit. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Barbells will be prolific.
Yeah. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Pretty heavy barbell days. Tuesday only barbell day.
Only weightlifting day.
Yeah. So it'll be pretty tough. It'll be good. It'll give you, like Terry said, give it a little fine-tuning the barbell cycling skills so you can hopefully get there way more efficiently because it's a hard week. It's a hard week.
And to build on the weightlifting workshop idea, we'll then also later in the month of July host our 14-year anniversary celebration for Morristown, where we are, for the first time ever, not training to metabolic conditioning fatigue, but will challenge you to perform under the eyes of many with a weightlifting meet. And we're not going to call it a mock meet. It'll just be a weightlifting meet, unsanctioned. It'll be a good time. There will be a big carrot for you all to chase if you're interested. Let's discuss that this afternoon. So it won't be all for nothing. You will win something if you win something. If you win, you'll win something.
Yeah, so if you're going to show up to the workshop, it's all just snatch, clean, jerk, things of that nature. And so, as these guys are saying, we'll just build upon that knowledge, probably get frustrated for a couple of hours, and then hopefully leave with some sort of positive, I guess, affirmation that we're moving in the right direction. But we will follow that up with that meet. But we are hoping there'll be a lot of participation, mainly because it's not like we're asking you to do 1,000 burpees like we might normally try to do with a CrossFit celebration of being open. But we're going to celebrate by allowing you to only do 6 lifts. You can hang out with us, and then you can go home and not feel all beat up and sore. But we are asking you to be judged just a little bit on this. So it's not the end of the world, but I don't know about you guys, those are some of my favorite memories as far as competition is concerned. I remember watching you on live stream come out with nanos on, like 20 seconds left, and hit like 150 kilo snatch.
Don't be done.
Power snatch.
Anybody who watched the Hurt the announcer too.
Yes.
I know
People will still talk about that. Yeah, right.
So no doubt about that.
Yeah, the first one was the one G's like, Jay, you got to go. I was like, ugh, scared me to
It was a
death.
30-second. It was a 30-second beep, and we were still back in the training room.
Yeah.
essentially.
So it scared me.
Right now, I think you picked the barbell up with less than 10 seconds.
It's scared me to death.
Rip and ring.
But we'll do that. We'll explain how the meet will work, Steve. Like how many lifts and stuff.
Yes. So everyone will get 3 attempts at a snatch, and obviously you'll take your best one from those 3, and then we'll have just a brief intermission to allow you to warm up, and it'll be the clean and jerk time. Basically, you'll have the same thing, 3 lifts, take your best from there, and then from that, you have something called a total, and that's normally what you're going to be scored off of when it comes to any sort of weightlifting competition. And so, like I said, just a little bit nerve-wracking, but not as bad as you would think once you start to go through it. As far as the way the ruling goes, you have basically 3 white lights or 3 red lights from 3 judges. And so if you have a good lift, all you got to get is 2 out of 3 white lights. If you get 2 out of 3 red lights, of course, that's a bad lift. And so the only main thing you really have to concern yourself with is the elbow lockout. I don't know how hardcore we're going to be on that, but I would say pretty hardcore. Right? So mainly just worry about the elbow. So when I'm referring to your elbows, mainly when you do a clean and you go into your jerk, if there's a press out of any kind and not just a straight action to a locked out elbow, that's when you would be faulted and have a red flag. Or is it the one where your elbows touch your legs as well in a clean? Yeah, so if that happens, then technically that would be a red light as well. Other than that,
And if anything falls off your person that hits the floor. So I wear knee wraps and say this thing comes unravels, hit the floor, automatic, no rep. Or if you're back and you have plugs in that falls out, hits the floor, automatic, no rep.
solid bicket.
Which seems kind of a strange arbitrary rule.
It is. And then unless they've changed it. That was what we were doing it because
Some things have changed. Like you can now wear tights and things underneath your singlet.
you don't have to wear the
Changed.
chains.
Used to have to see skin between knee wrap and singlet.
Yeah, that's right.
Some of that stuff's changed. I wonder if that's still the case. I hadn't really studied up on rules. Interesting.
Seemed like the girls were head to toe. Speaking of guys, we used to love weightlifting. Like back in the day, like we've had 20 plus people qualify for national level events. We also have national champions. We got G, who else? Robbie and Contia. So we got 3 national champs in masters weightlifting. Shannon got second in the nation in 2015 or 16. So we love it. We pride ourselves in coaching it well and excelling with our members, making them better than most CrossFit gyms. I'll say that. But we'll have
Sure, yeah.
There's no doubts.
Like one thing to
Spades.
No,
circle back to, maybe if you're curious about how added weight and such works. So you get to choose where you want to start or come out, as low or as high as you want. And then from there, you just incrementally build. We'll make barbell adjustments and stuff throughout the session. And you kind of, you declare kind of where you are? You can make a change. Formal, but informal.
Informal that way. Somebody wants to make a change.
Yeah.
You don't speak kilograms or metric system. We'll help do the math to convert. So we have kilograms and more. So
Yeah, so don't let there be like a high barrier. Don't think there's a high barrier of entry from a weight standpoint. You could technically step up with, the barbell and perform a lift, and then it just works its way up from there. But everyone kind of hops in as they go.
and I'll try to find the video link. Hopefully USAW has some up that shows the exact rules. So if you need fresh up, I'll put it in the notes below. So if you need to actually have something as a list to check off, we'll have that for you.
no singlet required. We're not going to do that.
Unless you want to. Galen's going to be judging it.
It's actually the rules of the verse. Everybody else lives in
Steve, bring yours, I'll bring mine.
That's it, Darren.
Yeah, you can order a youth media. Cool, but that'll be fun. First time we've done it as a gym, right? You used to host them, as we talked about this before, as like a region, or
Right.
different gyms would come. You go to a different one every. Was it every quarter?
Yeah, so there's at least 1 or 2 a year.
Yeah. So first time of just our members in house, though, which I think is cool.
Yeah, fun. It will be a good time. And we highly encourage everybody to participate because there's no cost to do it. The only thing you have to gain is experience. So, yeah. It's like you great gain interest. It's like, oh, wow, this is less than I thought it was going to be. And that could potentially fuel some more forward towards or national weightlifting pushes. Yeah, by a larger group. It does. Yeah.
Don't you look at that?
He just walks right here.
Maybe can get into it. There it is.
I got a couple more years.
Yeah, I got done a platform yet. I have not.
He's on creatine though. We're good.
It's working so well.
Very cool. No, that should be exciting.
And also, guys, if you're not doing it, just come hang out. Like, we'll most likely have some food, some sort of beverage or something like that. Just come hang out. No big deal. We want you to be there. We want it to be a celebration. Anybody's out there that smokes and grills food as good as Taryn, and they want to lend their abilities to it, and
Take it and has volunteered potentially.
Yeah, not smokes like this, right?
Yeah, it's not like that.
Smoke a cigar.
Yes, there we go. Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
Or come help load bars when you're sure. Just come hang out and be a good time. We won't spend the whole day, but a good portion of half a day, I'd say. Yeah, I'd do longer, depending.
Cool. That probably wraps that part up. So that date for that event,
We July 27th.
Let's forget that.
That'll be Emily's birthday.
Yeah, a few days after Jeff.
whoa, shout out to Emily.
What's it?
That's Jeff 27, Drew.
It's Shane. What's that, Shane?
Oh,
Yeah.
we love you too, Shane.
Yeah, shout out to Shane.
Shane's birthday, yeah.
Okay.
Robin's 19, so that's 24, so we got a nice little people.
Yeah, there's a 14-year term. We opened on Justin's birthday 14 years ago. Was also on Saturday, so happy.
Yeah, so we get one of those Heineken kegs.
Yes,
We did have it.
I've been to this stuff.
It was. We had one for some reason. Idiots. It's 325.
Ragers. I had 12 beers in it. They got hammered between 4 of them. That's probably the truth.
That wouldn't be the truth now. But not back then.
Oh my gosh. Cool. Well, we also, we're not too far removed from our Summer Strong event where we got to bring some new information and stuff to you guys. And we kicked that around in our last podcast. And we also went not out exploring and going to continuing education type events on the road, still try to stay in tune with things of that nature when we're home. And Justin ran across a really good podcast. And if you're in the podcasting world, if you're a Dr. Rhonda Patrick fan or an Andrew Huberman fan, you probably saw this, or maybe saw at least the hyperlink to it. But we also wanted to unpack a discussion that they had about all kinds of stuff. Those are two very large minds in the fitness and wellness and brain space, etc. They do a lot of research. They review a lot of research. They break it down and make it understandable for us knuckleheads. And in turn, maybe we save you a little time. We're going to expand upon a little bit of that for you folks out there. So
It's 3.5 hours.
it's 3.5 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe our few minutes here will spare you the detail.
TLDW. Too long didn't watch. That's what we're. So
So what that means, I have no clue.
TLDR means too long didn't.
I always wanted to say the download.
It's like a synopsis. So it's like the abstract of scientific paper.
Okay.
That's what we're giving here.
Well,
Steve, what do you call those minds, Steve? Too long didn't read.
Yeah, sometimes I pick on you guys in the gym. It's all out of love, especially if you can't handle doing mobility for like a minute at a time. You know who you are.
If you can't read. I've heard you say that. So you can't let me help you can't read. It's also into your math.
Yeah. It's all out of love. I want to make sure you pay attention to what we're saying, okay? But if you, especially if you come to 8:15, this is mostly you. But it's morning classes. You know, sometimes you guys get to kind of frolicking around, which we like. But you don't hang in there all the way on mobility. So I have to say, you're a TikTok brain. It means you cannot, for whatever reason, keep attention the past 10 seconds. So it's all out of love. But yes, you're a TikTok brain.
or you're 32 seconds in, but oh, you forgot about it.
Yeah, you guys too. I believe it. That's right.
When are we switching? We love you guys. We do. We're looking out for you.
You aren't telling me? Yeah.
So maybe the best way we can do it is just kind of start riffing and kicking our only ideas, things we thought were interesting in it. And I choose Steve to go first.
Yeah, so I'm probably not the best guy to listen to this, but basically what I thought was fascinating was the fact that dopamine was basically you can have a resurgence of dopamine, and we have all kinds of things trying to rob us of that. I thought the amphetamines, because I looked at Galen and I was like, I remember reading about cocaine was one because it basically blocks your receptors of getting dopamine once you come off of it, which hopefully everybody listening to this is not on cocaine, but still. The dopamine receptor, of course, can be damaged quite a bit. So those were some of the things I was hanging on to, but it could be basically repaired in some form. Mainly, you have to be really careful with things like that when it comes to CrossFit training in particular. Not really just dopamine, but all of your neurological responses. Mainly because for me, I don't know about you guys, but like adrenal glands, things of that nature, where I've been competitive for quite a few years in CrossFit, there's been times where I don't feel like I have recovered at all, and it's kind of fell that way for a long time. So you have to pay attention to your training. That's one of the main things I took from it was pay attention to the way your body feels, your training in particular. If you're going too hard all the time, Galen does a good job of telling us to leave a little bit on the table. It's good to leave out of here thinking you get a little more than there's times I leave out of there even yesterday.
Yesterday was a good day.
Yesterday, I felt like I
thinking that.
left my soul there is what it felt. What was yesterday? Yesterday was
Thursday, trained for 5.
Yes.
That's how I presented.
Yes. So
3 trained for 5 rounds for time.
yeah, and so that's a great example of making sure that you are recovering, and that's what I took away most from it for you guys. If I'm going to let you know about it in particular, because it would make more sense and apply more to us in that regard. So that was the main thing I took away. I don't know how you interpret it.
There's so much that I probably can't remember, but
You could take 15 minutes and talk 6 hours.
Yeah,
Like you really could for that podcast.
Something too, I'll piggyback off of this really quick based on you saying leave some in the tank that you'll see drop back into programming in weeks to come is going to be that RPE still that we've been a little bit without for a while. So that's a good little metric too. Truly basing it on how you feel in that moment or that day, and then knowing that today is a day, 5 of 6 or 5 of 10 or 6 of 10 RPE. Perfect example of listening to your body. Are we thinking we're helping you to listen to your body if it's been some tough days previously to ease into the following days? But
yeah, and to take it a little further, I think most people feel like they get the majority of the positive sides of what we do in the gym. In the gym is where you break things down. Where you recover is where you're able to build muscle and get better. So I wish there was a better way of flipping that paradigm for people, because they always want to just push really hard in the gym. And sometimes you're pushing too far, as in your habits.
Undernourished.
Yes, your habits at home. Your habits at home matter as much, if not more, than what you're doing in the gym. So if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not eating right, and you're pounding yourself into the sand in the gym and at work, you're kind of doing yourself you're jumping forward maybe 6 or 7 steps, but you're also getting knocked back 4 or 5. So in other words, you could take bigger leaps forward if you pay attention to those things as well. And that's kind of the way I took some of that podcasting too, was, again, taking care of your body. And a lot of that will be outside of the gym as well. So I wanted to bring that up too.
Do y'all follow Wad Science by chance? Well, if you follow Wad Science on Instagram, they also have a YouTube channel. It's a researcher. I think he's in Sweden. He studied, I think, CrossFit movements. We just want to gather it from the surface. In effect on physiology. He's a scientist, and he was talking about they would do tests on recovery, glycogen stores, and all that stuff. And he talked about a super hard CrossFit workout. They did examples of Fran and Karen. Fran with your legs would take almost 72 hours to fully recover. So if you notice, if we have a squatting day that's super heavy squatting day, we're probably not going to have another squatting day after that because you need to recover something like that. Air squats be a little bit different, but basically telling you if you have 3 squatting days in a row, you're not doing any benefit unless you're
more likely to do harm.
Yes, unless you're a CrossFit Games athlete and you have to just have that volume built up. But they put out a video, I think it was last week. It's 25, 30-minute video. I watched it yesterday. Spectacular. Breaks down the importance of recovery. He said it looks like the best is kind of similar to what Greg Glassman says, 3 to 4 days on, 1 day off, or basically an active recovery day on that day. So those days that Taryn programs, everybody in her programs, it's like, oh, this is a boring day where I just come and move. Those are beneficial to help flush out that lactate, soreness, get blood flowing, so you can come back and go harder. So RPE, Steve opened up a whole can of worms with this topic, which is awesome for you and us to talk about.
Yeah, and another thing I try to think about, in case you guys don't know, like neurotransmitters essentially are just what's firing through your body and allowing you to feel certain ways. So like dopamine is what allows you to feel good. Norepinephrine, I believe is the other one. Epinephrine, yes, thank you. So that's another one, and those actually were
Epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, they call them cousins. I don't remember the exact terminology of the type of catecholamines.
Yes.
And they're modulators. Remember, he was very particular in saying these are modulators, not transmitters.
Yeah, and another thing I thought was super useful, at least for me, was we're really big on social media. I think everybody here would easily say that, and I'm sure you guys as well. You find yourself scrolling through that, and what I thought was really cool was setting yourself up for the right use of dopamine. In other words, you're getting fulfillment off social media, if you're getting fulfillment off of things that are really kind of setting you back. Whereas like with what we do, with the CrossFit stuff or going out for hikes with the gym or whatever it may be, we do those harder things in order to get to the end. And the end is that dopamine rush that we're after. And so those are healthy ways to get dopamine. And you need to really track the ways that are unhealthy and really try to avoid those, because it just sets us up for, the body being overloaded with that and it not being as special or as important as it needs to be. And another one I always thought of, just simple things that you take for granted. One being, I remember listening to a podcast where they talked about being lonely. Being lonely back in the Paleolithic era was meaning that you were away from your tribe, and if you were alone, you would die. So today you get the sense of loneliness from that prehistoric era. And so once you're able to get back with a group, say it's the gym or maybe it's, your significant other or whatever it is, that rush of dopamine comes back from things like that. Just things that we take for granted and don't think much about would have kept us alive however many thousand years ago. Thought that was really cool.
So like the instant gratification, the social media, if you've ever known people in a bodybuilding gym that will do steroids, they'll cycle on steroids, work out for 8 weeks, crush themselves. Once they go off, dopamine drops. I'm not on that anymore. I don't want to work out. And they can't get high until they do that again, basically. Same thing with, probably cut this out. It's like I get an instant change, and it's just like, oh, I like this. I got to do it again. I got to get a tattoo. Oh, we're tattoo. It's kind of like that. I would say.
One of the main complaint or that interests me about the dopamine thing was that it is a resource that we can deplete, but also that regenerates, and that dopamine acts more like a motivator more than that to the reward. So he pointed out the rat study where they neurologically removed the dopamine system from rats, and then they had a group of rats without the dopamine reward system, and they had a group of rats with the dopamine reward system. And both groups of rats were motivated by food or had food as a motivator. The one with the removed mechanism, even though there was a reward, they had absolutely no interest in making the move towards the reward. And the ones, even though the ones who still had the system intact, they would cross a shock play, they would do something. There was a number of different ways that they would punish the rat, but the rat was willing to move for the food, even though there was punishment. But the ones that didn't have any punishment, did have the dopamine system, had no food motivation. It was really interesting. Then I don't exactly remember where I was headed with that, but to me, it confirmed the bias, like the way that you can leverage your dopamine. If you train at the same time for 3 or 4 days in a row, there's going to be this almost like a circadian rhythm to the way that your body produces and releases dopamine. If you're going to chase the feel-good feelings,
Exercise and treatment.
correct.
Yeah.
It was. I'm obviously talking out of my class here, but it confirmed a lot of what Steve and I were talking about earlier. What we know, but we didn't quite understand.
Yes.
About behavior. So it was interesting.
Yeah.
Long rambling.
And I think Rhonda set him up for, asking how someone who lacks a lot of motivation, how they would set themselves up for success by trying to have some sort of dopamine carrot to chase. Because there are some people who are go-getters. You don't have to motivate them. They're there, right? But there are some people who are a little more laid back. It doesn't mean as much to them. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay, because we need to have both parties. But there needs to be some sort of system in play that allows you to have success and be able to find it on a long-term basis. The main one I would think would help our people here would be mainly if you are the type to give in to eating incorrectly just because there's been, a bad day or something go on, and you're not really rewarding yourself for the right thing. And I used to be one of those people. I weighed 300 pounds coming out of high school, and so I had to build good habits, whether it's only have one cheat meal a week, one cheat meal, every day if you're really far back in that part of your life. Like for me, that was that far back. So I always thought it was good to build systems like that. And then even take it a little further, like with ice cream, you guys have had Halo Top, and sure, that's like a good way of tasting ice cream without getting, 2,000 calories of Ben & Jerry's. Right, it's only like 200 calories. But those are good ways I think that would help, hopefully, you guys that are listening. If you have those kind of struggles, and maybe you do, it would help you to kind of stair-step your way up, but not having to give up what you consider being fun as far as eating and things of that nature.
When he brought the, what's the cortex?
Anterior mid-cingulate cortex.
Anterior mid-cingulate cortex. He was talking about people who live longer, usually that part of their brain does not atrophy. And he's talking about, you see this with people who are really self-motivated, people who have stricter diets. And when he said that, I was like, I bet Jesus really big. I was cortex. It's like,
Well, here's the thing. Here's another thing. Here's my big takeaway. And this is, again, maybe just subjective observation, and maybe I'm confirming my own bias. But for a long time, I've been a big subscriber to the belief that we only move towards pain, or excuse me, we only will act towards seeking pleasure or avoidance of pain. Like those, to call it simplistic, maybe it's too reductionist. But motivation happens when it's more, I have to get up when it's more painful for me to sit here than it is for me to get up. So I'll get up and I'll avoid the pain that I would experience. Or it must be more pleasurable for me to be over there. So I'll get up and chase the pleasure. So the dopamine, in my opinion, hit some of what, at least what I took away from that podcast was dopamine is a motivator. It provides reason to act. Not necessarily once you have arrived, the reward thing. I think we correlate the dopamine reward with having achieved the thing. And what I'm starting to realize, and we always say that the path becomes the way, what stands in the way of the impediment to action becomes the action. The only way is through it. And I know it's kind of meta. Maybe it's a little bit too much like Taoism, but the way is the reward. The journey is the reward. And once you kind of reframe that to say, get up, start moving, insight is far more correlated with action than sitting around thinking about, okay, there's going to be some insight. Action leads to insight, or then insight leads to action. Dopamine being the reward for having moved, having avoided the pain, or having sought the pleasure, and then tying that into, do I want to work out? Probably not. Will I feel worse if I don't? Probably. So I'm avoiding the pain of regret having not worked out, and hopefully, and then having the reward of actually having trained, or food, or conversation with people that you don't particularly want to have.
right. Or stop someone TikTok is seeing us saying.
Yeah, turn off your cell phone. Don't seek the next little junk food informational fight through social media.
So it's almost like everyone kind of thinks about, I work out because I have a goal that I want to get to, whether it be look better, feel better, be faster, be stronger. But what they're really getting was the daily reward of the use of dopamine,
Pursuing
as what gets you moving to begin with.
Right.
Plus, I mean, think about this, like through social media, just flipping through your phone, maybe if you're somebody who posts a lot, which I'm definitely one of those people, you see likes and that really hits you, but you didn't work. I didn't work for that.
Yeah.
And there's something more to, doing a friend like workout yesterday, and, you're laying there next to your friends. You're like, all right, I'm dead. I ain't gonna be able to walk out, but I'll see you tomorrow. Yeah. And I think there's a lot more to that as far as like earning something than there is something that was super easy for me to get.
Tell me you're not more satisfied by having earned a vantage point, or having earned a lift, or having earned building your own home. There's so much more satisfaction for me. And again, I'm subjective. Having reached some milestone and knowing that I had to pay, I had to spend some skin to get there, time, effort, anything else. It's real. Like there's tooth and bite and bark.
I did it firsthand. Right. It's easy to talk about because we're very fortunate. If you didn't know, I get to travel a little bit. And they know. Those even more so than don't know. And unfortunately, the circumstances was unique on one of our trips with some of the most iconic views. We were fortunate enough to get to go to Switzerland, but had a travel partner that had a pretty bad foot injury, which prevented us from doing any hiking But fortunately enough, in that beautiful country with those beautiful mountains, there's gondolas pretty much set up everywhere. And we were there out of ski season, so they were still running those as an opportunity to be able to get to still see the views. For those who did hike, normally we're hikers. Normally we earn the view. Normally we have to struggle to get to it. And then, as Galen said, there's that much more reward associated with it. I felt firsthand. And it's beautiful, but it was definitely not as fulfilling, nor as fulfilling a trip, which was really, really weird as it turns out, that it did end up as high on the list as I thought it was going to, with being able to see some of those things. Maybe that's associated with it, maybe not, but
That's the dopamine journey.
I can now say firsthand that, because, fortunately we've always earned them because we were always up for the hike kind of thing. And this time we couldn't. We rode. It was pretty. It was nice. It wasn't fulfilling. Like, it was very interesting.
I'm not saying everyone sees the world that way, but
I would say most people do. Oh, yeah, I'd say that's.
It sounds like it's a pathway built in to some.
maybe it's a little bit of a.
Some people just don't have it tapped.
Well, they haven't felt it.
They
haven't felt the sense of accomplishment after having put a lot of miles under their feet, or having studied really hard for something and passed the test, and known that you passed the test on your own mental might,
Or do. They're really afraid
or lose 100 pounds because you stayed the course on your nutrition, or not train for Fran and do a 3-minute Fran, but a third round times 5. It's way harder that way, if you ask me too. I thought it was much more painful.
I was telling people, I said, if you're super fit, I think that you could probably do Fred faster because of the
Like less breaks.
But if you're less fit, you're going to push a little bit harder yesterday because of the transition to give you enough rest to kind of push the very fit. Still first. But the dopamine thing is awesome, and that kind of.
It's really interesting. It was provided the carrot and the whip. The dopamine is both.
Yeah, and the more you do it, the easier you get. It's like we've been biking. Robin and I've been biking 2 to 3 times a week at the house, and it's just like the first 2 weeks I did it sucked. Now it's kind of like I kind of want to do this. This is fun.
Maybe you're leveraging it, right?
Yeah,
kind of. I don't remember what
we did this morning before we came here. Robin and I did 20 minutes on the bike, alternating 2 minutes. And it's just like, all right, just get here, sweat a little bit before we leave, and go.
Speaking of, circle back to that, because you mentioned it, you briefly brought it up, you used the terminology that he used, Andrew, in the podcast. You maybe created a little bit of exercise in training.
Yeah.
Yeah, so dig into that a little bit more, and I thought it's very interesting.
So if you saw our post that has a colleague swollen on it, we posted on social media with that. And he talked about it in training. Basically, your body will, circadian clock will link up to when you exercise. So if you're like me, you're normally exercising at either in the morning time or at 3:30. Before that time, your heart rate will actually start getting you amped up for that because it thinks it's going to go through that, which basically motivates you, creates the dopamine to where it's just like, I need to go do this, and then you'll go do that, which is really cool. So if you know someone, or you're just unmotivated, you haven't been here 2 weeks, I don't think podcast, it said it takes 3 to 7 days to create that habit. So if you can go work out at the same time for 3 to 7 days straight, like, you're going to be programming your body, your circadian clock, to be like, I know something exercise-based is going to happen at this time, so I can start, and I want to do that.
It's like your body becomes its own little hyper.
Yeah, right. It's just like circadian rhythm. I mean, it's like sleep hygiene. It's like anything else. If you develop a pattern, your body expects the pattern and then behaves in a way that supports the pattern.
Yeah.
Right. And he even mentioned like reading a book. He's like, there's no doubt that it's much more interesting to watch a YouTube video. But if I sit and struggle through 10 minutes of reading after those, it's almost like my brain has to warm up or the focus will get. So even if you're pursuing something that's more intellectual, sit with it, carve out the time, struggle through your first 10 minutes, and then maybe you'll find a rhythm after a few days.
And a lot of our members have probably experienced that. We have a lot of folks that are very consistent with their class times, works out with the schedule, I'm sure, but also probably is in that groove to where you feel unfulfilled if you didn't make your class. And I would probably venture to say, I don't know this, I don't know that they mentioned it, but it can probably swing pretty quickly back the other direction.
I'll say so.
We've seen folks miss a day, turns into 3 days, turns into a week.
It's hard to break the other.
And now it's hard to swing the pendulum back. So it's interesting that your body can reward that type behavior and prepare you and gear you up for it, but then there's another side to it.
Like we're built for stasis.
Right.
Stasis.
Then you start returning back to the feel good side of things, and you forget about the pursuit.
kind of thing. That's perfect, because I was thinking, how easy is it to, now somebody was mentioning Grubhub the other day. I've never used it, right? But you can sit here in your house, never leave, like probably for weeks if you don't want to, and just get somebody to bring you something to your door, and how easy our lives have become. And I think as a population, at least nationally, we show that with our obesity rates. And so if you can, and I know it's really hard to do, but if you could think of maybe going backwards in time as far as things that would get you up and get you motivated, get you going, maybe set the phone aside. For me, it's always training at the same time of day, no matter what, and always will be. But I think with most people, if they're able to maybe forget about the current world they're in, because I think it's almost kind of cool now not to work out. It's kind of cool to be overweight, the dad bod thing, which I think is crazy, but
It's hella good marketing for pharmaceutical companies and doctors
yes.
and the government.
It starts with a G.
Yeah, so like you mentioned the pursuit, it made me think of that. Like it's almost like if you could be the opposite of most of the people around you, you will be fine.
What's the challenge you have at the beginning of the year called?
The outlier challenge. You got to be an outlier.
What's that mean?
You'll never go wrong doing the hard thing.
Yeah.
Like, you may end up not in this place you wanted, but most likely, if you're going to get rewarded with you work for it, Gail talked about the hype. Terry talked about the hype. Like, it's go there. And I hate hype. You be sons about you.
And speaking of doing the hard thing too, that can take shape in a lot of different ways. If you've been with us in Bristol, we have the plunge set up now, and a good handful of folks take full advantage of that and get the full effect and big response and dopamine release from the plunge. But also, we mentioned it earlier, I want to dig in a little bit more, and shout out to Channing for showing me this a little while ago. Andrew Huberman also had on David Goggins. So shout out to David Goggins if anyone's fans of him and all the hard decisions and hard work that he likes to circle back to. That's kind of the framework of who he is. But with Rhonda Patrick, they talk about that anterior mid-cingulate cortex. And just to explain what that is in layman's terms, the way they explain it, and correct me if I'm wrong on how you guys comprehended it, it's like a physical section of the brain that is responsible for, as Justin mentioned, what they think to be kind of the will to live, but it's essentially modulated in size. The bigger, the better. The smaller, the not as good. But by doing things that you don't want to do, which I thought was interesting. It's not just hard things, because as you said, you've become kind of accustomed to the bike. You've started kind of enjoying it. Everybody has the days or the tasks or or the plunge that there is no getting really used to the first getting into it. There may be a member out there, if you're listening, that actually enjoys it now. I'm not sure about you, Michael. I think you actually enjoy it. But nonetheless, the more times that you make the conscious decision to do the thing that you don't want to do, even if it's not physically demanding. For me, it might be opening a physical book that I don't enjoy sitting there and thumbing through pages. But if you're making the decision to do it, it's like a tiny layer, if you want to think of it that way, that grows on that mid-cingulate cortex. And then I don't want to do the 5 rounds of 9 and 9 for time today. A tiny little layer, if I choose to do it. If it's a workout that's like, I really love this running workout. I'm going to go ahead and do it. I worked out. I did something hard, not necessarily growth, which I thought to be very, very interesting. And the more you swing towards the things you want to do, even if they are good for you, the more that thing either remains the same size or it can become small. Yeah. So it's finding things that you don't necessarily, they can be hard or easy, but that you physically in the moment do not want to do, but making yourself do them. I'm sure there's also a reward from a dopamine, standpoint as well from that, but a physical region that now can be tracked in the brain is starting to grow and develop.
So that's the front side of the front part of your brain, I'm assuming, based on the nomenclature. Anterior.
Sure. Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah, and they say that it's larger in leaner people, smaller in obese people, folks that live longer,
Just super livers or something like that, what it comes? Yeah, super. Yeah.
Yeah, people that live way past the average lifespan, the life expectancy of the population. Their anterior mid-cingulate cortex is larger in comparison. That's the association with the will to live type concept. So somehow or another, those folks have either had to do things that they don't like consistently, or they choose to do things they don't like, or a little bit of both. But I thought that'd be fascinating.
It makes total sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it also if you're doing the stuff you don't want to do, it's going to make your life even better. So you're going to be more successful. Even after a while, it's like, all right, I like doing the bike now. Even just by doing the bike, even though I'm not growing that position, I'm still making myself
You
better.
got yourself to a better position by leveraging that.
By now it's uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Choose hardship elsewhere. Volunteer for hardship elsewhere.
And maybe
It's like
a shameless plug, that might be the beauty of the type of training that we do as well. How many power lifters, bodybuilders, weightlifters eventually enjoy doing those things that they do each day? I'm sure there's hard days or they don't want to, but for the most part, they're in those routines or those groups. Every single person watching this has a CrossFit workout that probably circles around, or a style of workout that circles around that they don't like to do and they don't want to do, but they show it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
It's like,
Those are the days you should cherry pick to be there instead of cherry pick not to be there.
sure, that's a good
Just
too.
based on not just the development of fitness, but the hypertrophy of that portion. Right.
The Jordan Peterson quote, like, the treasure's always
Sterquilus, inventor, and still that will be found.
Yep. So basically,
Where's what you most want, where you're least likely to look.
absolutely, which is
Timeless.
it's a good way to live your life phase. That's so good.
Plus, I was going to say, with what we do, I think it's such an easy carryover process. For me, when I first started out, I couldn't even do a pull-up. I feel like most of our members, I was at some level near where a lot of you guys are. And so for me, I would not worry about what the workout was going to be. I would just show up, and whatever got thrown at me, that's what I would basically have to go through. Yeah. And so the cool thing about going through that, I don't know if that part of my brain grew or not, but basically it allowed me to go back out into the world and do things that I thought were harder for me to do. And I was able to get through them just based on the callousness I built up from doing just simple workouts. Nobody thinks of a workout as life-changing, but the repetitiveness of going through things I wasn't really happy or accustomed to doing allowed me to put it into real life action, into things out in the world. And I think that's the beauty of what you're talking about, that whole cortex. And what we do as a gym seems very simple, and you can do our workouts anywhere, and it doesn't require a great facility, or you don't have to be in super shape. But the carryover of that mentality, I think, is worth many millions.
What the behavior teaches.
Correct.
The exercise behavior teaches how to problem solve anything elsewhere.
Greg Glassman's quote, the greatest adaptation that happens between the ears. And that's exactly what Steve is saying. That's so true.
Boy, that I can encapsulate that whole podcast.
Yep. I mean, it's very particular. Yeah.
Unbelievable. He's a sage, that man.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really cool. He kept referring to, I was asking you in the car, I was like, do you think your brain can kind of help you from being sick less often? My father's the type, he would always go to work whether he's sick or not. He'd never admit to being sick, or he would never.
Sorry, guys.
You've had people like that, old, like fixed people, who basically say nothing bothers me. But I kind of wonder if there's something to that. Of course, that's not completely true.
Doesn't work.
But I get where you're coming out. It makes you wonder.
They didn't make it to that placebo.
Sure.
And how placebo is also correlated to woo-woo, and they both openly admitted it. But whatever you believe, whatever you perceive to be real is likely more real. And your brain interprets it that way.
Right. Yeah, don't take it to the extreme. But there's something to that. I do believe it. And there are people out there that, this is a real deep subject. We don't have to go into it, but like even the term depression, like there's some people again, I always looked at my father as he's a super strong minded person. And so for him, there's no such thing as something like that anyways. And not that it's not real. It's just more of like, he won't accept it.
To him, it's not real.
To him, it's not real. And I've never perceived any weakness in him across my 34 years of living. And that, of course, looking at your father, I think that's kind of what you want to see is.
Is he like Big Steve Goggins?
That's right. That's exactly right. David Spector. Yeah. He's the East Tennessee version of David Goggins.
That's very cool. How are we shaping up over there?
Got 13 minutes.
Perfect. I'm carried
What did you pick, Jake? Was the kind of all this what we're talking about? Kind of everything?
Yeah, the pain avoidance, pleasure seeking was really interesting to me. And that the dopamine itself wasn't the reward. If dopamine was the catalyst for movement.
Yeah.
Movement to or from.
Yeah.
That was really, I would just correlate dopamine with pull the car far enough, you get your carrot treat. That was dopamine. But the way they describe it, dopamine is it's a modulator for movement. Like it creates in you the motivation to move. That's why the mice didn't have the system, didn't go for the food, even though there was no pain. And those who did have the system, had the pain, still went for it.
Now, I wonder too, obviously those mice were going for the reward, being the food. But how does did they get into how the refresh happens?
How the pool, they use the wave pool as the analogy, and there's a fine amount of dopamine, and then, for example, you have the cocaine, and we said you can have cocaine, and there's people who will pursue sex at the same time and have like 100x utilization of dopamine. So then the total volume of the pool goes down and down and down, and then stasis becomes so low that you have to have the exogenous version of the drug to create the dopamine again. So it's kind of like you're slowly draining from a reserve that would eventually fill itself up, but if you're abusing it, and chasing the high all the time.
And it's like a new
balance to new it's like you can see where the high water mark was, but the water's not going anywhere near.
Correct. So they can build back up there, or just build it.
Correct.
Right.
Like alcoholics, drug addicts.
Yeah, right.
Always chase
the gun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't drink or do drugs, guys.
That's kind of what I was referring to a little bit ago.
He also had the alcohol talk. I'm going to let you guys right into that.
Okay.
I said his impression was the best amount of alcohol to have on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
But up to 2.
Because that's a neurotoxin, essentially.
I mean, exactly how they.
There's a new study that came out last year before talking about there's no benefit to alcohol whatsoever.
Like all the Blue Zone stuff maybe have been antiquated as far as the idea is, but
Well, mainly
scientists change it all the time.
I was going to say,
If it pays for it,
yeah, that's true too. That's good. That's a good thing to bring it up.
Brought to you by dopamine.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of one way you could get a big dump of it, and this is maybe a shameless plug, maybe not, maybe just get it at home or find a way to do it at home. You may have heard us mention this in the gym, but they bring it up in the podcast again, and that's the dopamine response to extreme cold exposure and how it, from a sustainability or how long it was measurable in your blood, outlasts the use of cocaine. You probably heard that before when someone's like, yeah, right, there's no way this is what cocaine feels like when they're done. What they mean by that is you're going to have the lasting effect of that dopamine release into the body far longer than if you were to do cocaine.
But not the actual substance high, right?
I would assume, yeah. That's what I'm assuming. That's what cocaine feels like, but that's stupid.
Actually, it is what cocaine feels like. You should do it. You should do the cold plunge.
But just how it can last so much longer into your day.
What is it, 3 to 5 hours afterwards or something like that? Is that what it was?
Something like that.
Sense of euphoria, alertness, clearness of mind.
Right, for far longer.
Right.
There's nothing better than when you stand up out of the cold plunge. Well, think of it is so nice.
Going back to what I said earlier in the conversation about, being lonely and getting back to your tribe before you die, it's your body's prehistoric way of telling you, get to this dopamine so you can survive. Same thing in the cold plunge, right?
Contrast.
You're in there, you're freezing to death, your body thinks, you're trapped somewhere and need to get to warmth, and obviously once you get to it, then of course it'll reward you by sending for a good job.
Pleasurable state, less painful state.
Yeah.
Right. Just have a light.
That's what pain about this.
Absolutely.
That's what the sauna is. Let's find a cooler place instead of a hotter place. That's what eating is. Let's find a place of being fed as opposed to a place of being hungry or sleep or not sleep or relationship, not relationship.
Early 1900s, they would treat depression with cold therapy as well. And like mental institutes.
And there's a depression study about sauna too. Remember that?
Yeah.
I forget it was past week's email.
So, 2 hard things, guys. 2 hard. I mean,
It's really simple. This is one of those things I was telling Steve, we know, but we don't understand why. If you know it, like in your bones, doing hard things.
It's like, what's the avenue? What's actually going on in the brain?
Right. I don't have to know why. And part of me is like, I kind of glaze over with all the sciencey stuff because I know it well enough to, that's all. That's the amount that I need to know. I didn't know it to any granular detail. It confirms my bias.
Right.
Good.
Right.
Good job. Good. What's Shotgun say? It's hard. Good.
That's what we did that 15-mile ruck in St. Paul. G's like, why didn't you want to do this? I was like, I don't know. I just want to do something
It's
hard.
surprising for you to want to do it.
Yeah.
For sure. Right at my alley, probably yours.
Yeah.
Steve, I would
Singular cortex.
And when I got to sit down afterwards, it was like,
It's over.
man, this is the best thing ever. Get to have some Sour Patch Kids afterwards.
It was a good day, no matter.
Yeah, perfect. Did lose some skin, but
That's
but
yeah.
well,
Well, cool. Hopefully you guys took a little something from that. If you want to know more of the sciencey stuff, if you want to hear two professionals and experts, something not
Not
us four who know this much about what they were talking about, dig in, then just search Dr. Rhonda Patrick.
I'll put it below.
Andrew Huberman, the link below. If you want to hear a little more about the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, as I almost forget about it, check out the one with David Goggins. That's a good one too. Or you can even search the clip. If you need short-lived motivation, there's like a little YouTube short, speaking of TikTok brain, of them talking about it real quick. Of course, David didn't necessarily know it in the time, but he ate it up because that's the life he lives. But that's out there on YouTube as well.
Apply this to the Hero's Journey Week. Apply this to the weightlifting week. Apply this to the Endure Challenge that we do at the end of the year. The first year patch said struggle is progress. And like that whole podcast, yes.
Apply this to what your dinner plate looks like.
Yep, there you go. What your pre-group looks like, what your weekends look like.
Any place, like when you find struggle, that's where you find growth. There's an opportunity for you to learn about yourself every time you find yourself at an impasse, because it's not an impasse. It's just an opportunity to problem solve.
I was going to say a good way to wrap this up is the tree in your backyard.
Carry on.
Yeah, so you're kind of worried about it possibly not doing so well. It's a really, really big tree, very mature tree, but that it basically, even though it might not be growing or living to its full potential anymore, it could be on its way out. It's still trying to grow out from the sides.
That's good.
Kind of you know what I'm saying? So in other words, it's kind of facing uphill, but it's still trying to find other ways to continue.
Will to live.
The will to live, yeah.
I bet it's anterior mid-cingulate cortex.
You guys going to put a counter at the bottom?
Fascinating. If you made it this far, thanks for listening. As always, we'll keep bringing these if you guys keep watching. Hopefully we can do it in this format. Hopefully it flowed a little better and sounded a little better too.
Share with your friends. Yeah, I think share it on Facebook, share it on Instagram. It helps us out. We're not sponsored yet, but
make sure you let them know that we are medical experts and research journalists. Everything we say is gold. Kidding. Kidding. All right, guys. Until next time, thanks. We'll see you soon. Cheers.
yes.